Welcome back. I'm joined now by Vance Meek of the Fake Football. We're going to be talking some Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk some playoff scenarios and maybe an early look at the upcoming 2016 NFL Draft. I know Vance is usually very involved in that. But Vance, thanks for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, I really do appreciate it, and I'm hoping after the first of the year that I can get Vance and his brother Blake, who's they're both busy guys. I was able to sweet talk Vance into doing this, so I feel very, very fortunate in that. But you guys are some of my favorite Twitter follows on social media, and so I really appreciate interacting with you and all of that. But let's talk about the Monday Night Football game. I know it was a heartbreaker. I hate to make you revisit it, but I taught this show on this particular episode of Back Talk. I also have our Denver Broncos correspondent on talking about the game too. So I kind of like to get two different perspectives. That's always cool. Give me your perspective on the game. Do you think that Andy Dalton would have won it?
I want to say yes. I mean, you never know how things would play out. Obviously, Dalton has a history of not playing well in prime time, so you can't really say for sure that he would have. But
Monday
obviously, he's going to give you the best chance.
Yeah, Monday night is not his friend.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, but, I mean, in the first half, A.J. McCarron, I thought, played fairly well, was running that offense.
He played as well as anybody could possibly have played, especially for somebody playing in their only, third start?
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I think
he put the ball accurately. He did everything you could possibly have asked for as a fan.
Yeah, I'm a big SEC fan, and I've watched a lot of A.J. McCarron. Listen, I've already recorded my interview with Jennifer, so this is not going to be a shock to anybody. I despise Bama as, fake despise. You have to respect what they've done, right? I mean,
sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What they've managed to accomplish. And do you follow college ball? Do you have a college team?
I follow. I don't really have a team. I'm close to Ohio State just because it's a regional team, but I don't really have any preference.
Gotcha. Well, I'm a Tennessee fan, Tennessee alum, and obviously I despise Alabama as any self-respecting Tennessee fan would do.
Right.
But, you have to respect what they've done, and I watched a lot of A.J. McCarron in college. He has a lot of chest stuff. He does definitely believe in himself. That's kind of turned a lot of people off. But for me, I want confidence in a quarterback. So, I kind of thought that the criticism of that was a little misplaced. I think, and Jennifer and I talked about this, the thing that stood out in my mind, and I think the difference in the ball game, at least from my perspective and hers, is that the Broncos, and they don't always do this, but they made adjustments when it mattered, and Cincinnati did not.
As a Bengals fan, I would say, speaking for Bengals Nation or however you want to describe it, the biggest criticism of, or one of the biggest of Marvin Lewis era is the issues coming out in the second half. Teams consistently make the correct adjustments at halftime, and Lewis and company don't ever seem to be able to keep up, and they usually are not the same team in the second half that they are in the first. And I think that was a huge part. After the game, that was my biggest issue, was that after halftime, the Broncos came out a completely different team, and it showed. You couldn't.
Yeah, they switched from man to zone defense, and it was different, and they didn't do. A.J. McCarron couldn't do anything, but they didn't change anything. It didn't seem like.
Yeah, they tried to. Yeah, and that's, like I said, that's been an issue ongoing for over a decade now with Marvin Lewis. He just doesn't seem to be able to make the adjustment. In the first half, A.J. Green blew up the Broncos secondary. They had no answer for him. In the second half, they came out, switched up, made the adjustments, and A.J. Green, I don't remember even having a catch in the second half. He may have, but it wasn't anything significant if he did.
Yeah. I want to ask you about this. How much of that do you think was Hugh Jackson and how how much was not, and then we'll talk about his coaching status and talk a little bit about some of the other assistants that have been there.
Hugh, I can't say positively exactly. They're pretty closed, pretty tight-lipped about exactly how things are ran. They did a lot of the same things as far as offensively. They tried some of the trick formations, bringing in personnel, ran Wildcat. So, I mean, he tried a lot of different things. It just didn't work in the second half. I don't know for sure that Marvin is saying, let's try to take the air out of the ball in the second half and just run out the clock. That seems to be what a lot of people think. I'm not sure that I necessarily buy that. I think that was at least in large part due to a better pass rush and improved Broncos play in the second half. Things weren't going as well, and they couldn't figure out how to fix what was wrong.
There's a lot of buzz about Hugh Jackson for head coaching positions. He's been mentioned for what is expected to be the upcoming open position for the Tennessee Titans. It does seem likely that he is going to get another shot. I thought that he got the hook a little bit quickly in Oakland. They were going through some disarray during that time period. Do you expect him to leave like the other assistants? I fully expect him to. I fully expect him to get a head coaching job unless he. And I don't see this happening. I know when Jay Gruden and especially Mike Zimmer were with Cincinnati, Zimmer interviewed for jobs for a couple of years, and from what I gather, he was just not a very good interview, and it hurt him. He finally did get a chance, and an extremely good chance. He fell in the exactly right spot for him. He really
did.
I
feel like Hugh's a more personable person, and I don't think he'll have a problem with interviewing, and I think I fully expect him to have a job next year, and he deserves to have a job next year as a head coach.
Yeah. I really wanted the Titans to, at that time, really big into covering them and what have you. I wanted the Titans to hire Mike Zimmer, and it looked like it might be happening, and for whatever reason that did not happen. I agree. He's done a fantastic job in Minnesota with the Vikings. He does have an interesting personality. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy, and I think that, unfortunately, I think that he probably would have connected a lot better with Bud Adams than he did with the situation that he found himself presented with here in Tennessee. But it's going to be interesting to see where Hugh Jackson does end up. If he does end up in Tennessee, that would be a little ironic, I think, in a lot of ways. I wasn't the biggest fan of Jay Gruden, but I'm going to eat a little crow here. He's done a really.
Oh, you're not alone on that.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a good job this year. Kirk Cousins has really run. It reminds me a lot of the A.J. McCarron situation in a lot of ways. He fits what they want to do so well, and it's been a surprise. When teams do well, I think that makes the league a lot better. So.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting. Marvin Lewis has seemed to have had a lot of job security. Do you think that might be coming to an end, or is he going to be safe in the future?
I think he's probably in a situation where he'll only leave if disaster strikes and they just can't get back to winning seasons, or more likely he just decides he is ready to either try something else or hang him up and retire. I don't think he's going anywhere. There's a lot of criticism. His overall record is mediocre. His playoff record is just abysmal. But compared to other Bengals coaches since the early '90s, he's easily the best that's been here. So I think he's pretty safe unless he they just go on a streak of 2 or 3, 4 straight losing seasons.
It does seem to be that kind of situation. Several people have indicated to me that Mike Brown being fairly cheap might have something to do with that situation. It's going to be interesting to see how he does fare. Who's next in line? Who's going to take over if Hugh does leave?
That's a good question. They have some good coaches within. I don't know that. I don't know if I can really say, honestly, until after the season kind of pans out and see who's available. They're going to look and see. With the Bengals, it's a tricky situation hiring any coaches, especially from outside the organization, because of Mike Brown. He has his guys, and he likes his guys. So, it's going to be probably one of the assistants. I wouldn't have a guess which one, but they usually try to promote from within just because Mike Brown they have a set way he likes to do things.
Yeah. That will definitely be something to watch out for. Are the guys coming up in the ranks, are they going to be, as good as Mike Zimmer and Jay Gruden and Hugh Jackson? That's definitely going to be a question mark, I think. Let's real quick, as a fantasy football player and fan, Jeremy Hill was a huge disappointment. Help us make sense of the running game, and then we'll talk some playoffs, and then hopefully get into the draft.
Sure. To be honest, I think there'll be a lot of people in Cincinnati that would love to know what's wrong with Jeremy Hill. All indications going into the season were that Giovanni Bernard didn't seem like it seemed like he had lost something. He was really not very good at all in the preseason. Jeremy Hill looked quick, looked strong, looked like he was primed for a huge year. And then once the season started, they reversed roles. Suddenly, Bernard was the one with no hesitation. He took the ball and found the gap and just ran. And Hill seemed to want to hesitate. I don't know if it's maybe fears of fumbling, because he has had some issues with that, making him hesitate, or if I don't have. It seems like he's not committing himself to hitting the running lanes. He tends to get to the line, hesitate just long enough for the linebacker or whoever to find him and bring him down. So he's not playing the way he played at the end of last year.
Yeah, it's very curious, and I ended up just basically moving on for the most part. I had him in several different leagues. Just a quick note on the defense. Reggie Nelson, I talked about him a little bit on Twitter last night. He's been a great acquisition for the Bengals. He's a guy that, a veteran guy who's really had a fantastic career.
I'm sorry, my son is screaming. Can you say it one more time for me?
I was talking about Reggie Nelson and.
Reggie Nelson, yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. There were a lot of people that were critical of Nelson, especially early in the year, and he did struggle and still does from time to time making tackles, backing up. But, wow, has he been a ball magnet this year? And every time the ball is tipped, if it's high, if it's overthrown, he seems to be in the exact right spot, and he's making the plays. He's not only being in the right place, he's actually making the catches, which is something that Cincinnati secondary members have struggled with in years past. He's been Johnny on the spot all year long. Even last night when the ball was knocked loose from C.J. Anderson, there was Reggie Nelson jumping on top of it and pulling in the recovery. Yeah. So he's really, and being a veteran, that helps. He knows, he's instinctive. He knows where the ball's going to be and makes sure he's there. And he just has continually been excellent all year.
There's been a narrative, for lack of a better word, out there in the Twitter sphere on social media that the Bengals might possibly move A.J. McCarron, given how quarterback needy a lot of teams are and how well he's played. Do you see that as a possibility?
If there was an offer good enough, then sure. They've proved that they can and are willing to make a move with their quarterback. I think it would take a pretty good offer. If somebody said, we're going to give you a 7th-round pick if you'll give Vance McCarron, I think they'll just hang on to him. But if there was a good offer out, and it's possible, then you're right, there's been a lot of chatter about it just because he's played pretty well when he has got on the field. They would consider it. I don't think there would be any reason why they would not do it. They're pretty confident in Dalton, and I don't see them moving on from Dalton. So really it would be benefit to McCarron, too, if a team that is more likely to need him to start were able to work a deal out for him.
Let's talk a little bit about playoff scenarios. The Broncos clinched last night. Where do the Bengals stand?
The Bengals have clinched the AFC North. At this point, I believe they are locked into either the 2 or 3 seed, depending on next week. If the Bengals win and the Broncos lose, and I believe they play San Diego, then the Bengals would still flip and take the 2 seed. If the Broncos win, then regardless of what Cincinnati does, they're the 3.
Yeah, I looked at that real quick. Yeah, they have the third. Right now, they're the 3rd seed as the AFC North champ. The Texans, wow. The Chiefs.
Yeah.
Well, the Chiefs are really playing. Let me ask you this real quick. A lot of teams are going to be hot. I don't think there's a team in the league that's hotter than the Chiefs right now. Who would you rather face, and who would you like to avoid?
Well, I'm going to say probably the Jets would be I don't want to say the easiest matchup because they have played surprisingly well. But that seems to be probably their best chance to win. They can get pressure on Ryan Fitzpatrick and make him make plays, and they've proven that the secondary is good enough, if everybody's healthy anyway, that they can take advantage of a couple of bad throws and be the difference in the game. The other option would be the Chiefs, who are red hot, and I think they match up fairly well with them, but obviously right now the Chiefs are just firing on all cylinders, especially on defense. And then the other option would be Pittsburgh, and nobody in Cincinnati really wants to play Pittsburgh if they're honest with themselves, especially if Dalton is not on the field.
Yeah, I would think that the Broncos might be. I don't want to take away any shine from what they accomplished last night, but if the Bengals had kept their momentum going, and if they had played in the second half like they played in the first, they would have beaten the Broncos. There's no question in my mind. And so, with the situation, and we're getting ready to talk about Peyton Manning and the HGH stuff, I would think that they might be. I don't want to call them because their defense is kind of faded. They're definitely not an easy opponent, but I would call them one of the least hot teams heading into the playoffs.
I would agree with that. Their defense obviously is outstanding. Their secondary and their cornerbacks in particular are so good that it allows their front seven just to do whatever they want, really. They can trust their cornerback to be on an island with receivers. And for the most part, A.J. Green was taking advantage of it last night, but A.J. Green's a special case. They're so good that they can do a lot of things on defense, be able to blitz, and it's worked for them all year. They've won a lot of low-scoring games because their defense is just that good. Offensively, though, you're right. They're going to Brock Osweiler has played far and above, I think, what people might have expected.
Yeah.
But he is still technically the backup quarterback. He is still learning, and he's going to make mistakes. He's going to be inconsistent from time to time. And I think that the Broncos are beatable. They could very well lose in their first game they play. Then again, their defense could carry into the Super Bowl just as easily. So I think it's a kind of a hard team to predict as far as what they're going to do. But I think they would be not as scary as an opponent, I guess, as others may be.
Yeah, it's rather curious. Before we get off the game, the Monday Night Football game, I have to ask you, Jennifer and I were going to discuss this. We didn't get around to it. It featured the worst field goal attempt I have ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of them. Was that not the craziest thing you've ever seen?
That was pretty. Being on the Bengals side of things, the game was over. Really, I mean, pretty much all Bengals fans everywhere were content to have that in the game. And it looked like as they discussed on Monday Night Football, they did a good job talking about it. He planted his foot a little too far ahead, and it just it was terrible. It wasn't one that just missed. It was just not even close.
It was like a Charlie Brown kick.
It did, yes.
I fully expected to see him land on his rumpus.
Yeah, it was. That was definitely on the list of the worst field goal attempts ever.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Peyton Manning and the HGH quote unquote scandal that is currently occupying the NFL sphere. What do you make of all of that?
It's really hard to not give Peyton Manning the benefit of the doubt. I don't know that there's a more genuine, seeming, anyway, nicer player in NFL history. And I don't want to try and tarnish what he's done based on some very vague connection with HGH. Even the person that broke the story, quote, unquote, has backed off of it somewhat, saying, well, there's not any real link to Manning and HGH. It's just that they're a patient at that clinic. Especially if he is innocent completely, it's really not a fair situation for him to have been put into anyway based on such loose connections. But I can't. I'm going to trust Peyton Manning on this one completely until I have no reason to not to.
I've had this debate with some other people, too. I want to ask you, and I told Jennifer this when we chatted about this topic. I used to be very anti-PEDS, very, gung-ho about drug testing. And a few years ago, I did a complete about-face, and now I'm like, why do we care? Do you care about HGH? Do you care about PEDS?
I won't say I don't care at all. I think that the NFL needs to pour more research and not just assume, okay, we just need to ban this because it's HGH. Ooh, it's HGH, or PEDs or whatever.
Right.
They really need to research it and find out what my bigger concern would be, especially with them with such a focus on concussions and that kind of health long term with players. I would want to know more about the long term effects of something like HGH or any of the PEDs. But overall, when stuff like that happens, and so-and-so can suspended for 4 games for PEDs, especially when it's, I think Robert Mathis got suspended for fertility drug he was taking.
Allegedly.
Played a lot of time.
It's rather curious. We're going to be talking about this in a lot more detail in 2016. I suspect this topic is not going to go away, not simply because it's Peyton Manning and, of course, James Harrison. I was going to call him Marvin Harrison. Good Lord, my brain. James Harrison was also mentioned. He's vehemently denied it as well, and I don't say it because of those two big names, but because we're probably going to see other reports that guys are going to continue to get suspended. The risk reward there is definitely the kind of incentive that we'll get. My thing was, and Jennifer and I talked about this, prohibition never works. You try to prevent people from doing what they want, and we've seen that time and time again. The war on drugs was extremely costly and very ineffective, and so we'll see how that all pans out. I want to talk, speaking of 2016, before I let you go, you do a lot of draft work. Who are you working on now? What guys are interesting to you and what guys are not?
It's pretty early in my process. I've had some computer issues and then some work issues and different things that have kind of got me a little bit behind. I actually did spend most of the day watching some quarterbacks. Those important positions, so that's kind of where I started really going in depth. I actually just watched Carson Wentz. About 2 hours ago was who I was watching. I'm very intrigued.
That's cool.
A lot of people are down. He's a Division II or FBS or FCS rather. So he's going to have some knocks on that. But for me, he's got everything else you could want. His mechanics are good. He can throw it a mile. He can throw it 100 miles per hour. I think there's really a lot to like for a team in Dallas that can let him sit for a year or so, and I think he'd be really good. Very,
very, very excellent. Do you watch a lot of bowl games? There's a lot of bowl games on right now, obviously.
Yeah, I watched Cal, and was what I was watching actually just a few minutes ago. They ran away from Air Force, of course. I haven't got to watch a lot of the earlier ones due to the holidays and obligations with that, but I do plan on spending a large portion of the from about the 30th, 31st, all the the big bowls, as they're, if you want to call them that, come up. I definitely plan on spending a lot of time checking those out.
All right, very, very, very good. Vance, thanks again for joining me. Tell everybody out there where they can find you and find your work.
I will have some work upcoming on fakepigskin.com as soon as I'm able to get some more tape watched. for some NFL draft stuff, you can always find me at Vance Meek on Twitter. I love talking to people on Twitter, so anybody is welcome to follow me or just message me, ask questions about the Bengals, draft, and whatever. It doesn't matter. But I can pretty much always be found there.
Well, take it from me. If you're not following Vance, you definitely need to do it because I'm serious. Vance is one of my favorite follows on Twitter. He and his brother both, and I look forward to. I'm going to work on Blake. I'm going to sweet talk him and hopefully get both of you guys on a show soon.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I know he wants to. Like I said, he has a lot of obligations as well.
Right.
But I'm sure that he'll make some time, especially for you. So,
well, I appreciate
message him and make him get on.
All right. Well, have a happy New Year.
You do the same, and I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.